The Toyota Prado has entered its 13th year on sale, but it's certainly not showing any signs of slowing because this thing is still Australia's best-selling large SUV. Now, it may have gone on sale way back in 2009 in essentially the same form, but Toyota haven't totally rested on their laurels. They've been slowly tweaking the Land Cruiser Prado in that whole time to keep it fairly contemporary. And outside, I think they've done a pretty decent job. So you've got new things like this grille as of, I think, middle of 2020, when this car also got an update for the 2.8 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine, which brought the outputs to 150 kilowatts and 500 Newton meters. And then a little bit later, as of the middle of last year, I think, so 2021, it also scored these 19-inch alloy wheels. The design is called Prestige by Toyota, and personally, they're not my favorite looking wheels. I much prefer the design that came on the Prado before this, but you can let me know what you think in the comments section down below. I'd also love it if you could let me know what you think of this dusty bronze paintwork, which is a little bit like strawberry blonde, because in some lights it looks like beige, and in other lights it looks pink, which is, you know, going to be an interesting one depending on how you like your cars. Personally, I'm going to go for a red or a green in this high-spec Kakadu model, because I think that suits this car the best. But you can let me know down below what you think, of course, and if you haven't done so already, we'd love it if you could hit subscribe. Also, if you like the look of the Toyota Prado and you want to go ahead and organise a test drive or check out the brochure, we've dropped a link below this video to help you do just that. Now, you can tell the Prado's cabin was designed a little while ago, but Toyota have done some things to bring it into the 2020s, and it has worked to a certain extent. So this 9-inch touchscreen, which is connected to a pretty decent 14-speaker JBL stereo that has really good staging, also runs wired Apple CarPlay now. You've got these shortcut buttons too, so it's really quite easy to interact with, even though Toyota's software isn't the sexiest in the class. Now, below that, we've got simple to use HVAC controls, which just work, and then you've got your multi-terrain select system just below here with your 4 high, 4 low, and all of that feels adequately chunky for a 4-wheel drive without feeling excessively silly in how mechanical it is. It sort of suits that like concrete cowboy feeling of this vehicle. Now, I will mention that there are a lot of scattered switches around here, secondary switches, and there are a lot of them are behind this leather appointed steering wheel here. So you've got your camera view, idle up, your parking sensors down there that you can't see. You've also got your mirror adjust and a couple of other buttons down there that show that this car has been sort of slowly added to over the years without being able to be fully redesigned. And I'm sure all of that will be sorted out in the next generation of Prado, which is probably going to be unveiled sometime in 2024. Now, what about the actual equipment in here? Apart from the technology, well, we've got memory adjust seats, so power adjust for the driver with everything you could need, but the passenger seat doesn't get up and down adjustment, doesn't get height adjustment, and it also doesn't get any lumbar adjustment that the driver's seat does get, which is a bit of a penny pinching move, I reckon, from Toyota, and I would love to see that addressed in the future. But they do both have heating and cooling. You've got a single USB socket here, 12-volt socket here, 2 cup holders ahead of the shifter there, and another little cubby that isn't quite big enough for a contemporary smartphone. But the clincher of this car is that you do get a cool box, which is the perfect size for 4 cans of non-alcoholic drink of your choice, which is awesome. And it is literally the perfect size. There's even a little almost cup holder down there to stop them rattling about. So attention has clearly been paid in the Prado to that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, the same attention hasn't been paid to the door bins, which can only really take a couple of 700ml bottles. They're not broad enough to take a 1.5 litre large bottle. But that said, the actual quality and the feeling of this vehicle is very, very sturdy. Like, it feels like it's going to last forever. Everything you touch has a real stiffness and sturdiness to it, even up to the grab handles up here for your 4-wheel driving. They just feel well attached, and although the soft touch materials perhaps aren't the nicest, and this fake wood grain certainly isn't to my tastes, the big thing is that it feels like it's going to last, and that's really what matters in the Prado. Now, the actual back seat does get the same leather upholstery as the front seats, and the outboard pews do get 2-stage heating, which is great. You've also got adjustable ventilation here, no vents in the center, but you do have these ones up here, which are really nice because you can get them blowing straight on your face and cool you right down. The only problem is that there's not that much under thigh support owing to the quite high floor from this car's body on frame construction. That said, I've still got pretty decent toe room, huge amounts of knee room, and my headroom's pretty decent. There's no sunroof back here, unlike the front seat, to impede on that. And the rear seats do slide forwards as well. So if you want to have a little bit more boot space or space for the third row, you can do that pretty easily. Now the materials are just like the front as well. You've got soft touch on the doors, and you've got these door bins here, which again, much like the first row, don't offer that much storage for bottles, but at least you have this flip down armrest, which is actually really nice and softly padded here, with a couple more small cup holders for drinks and that sort of thing. You also got these ISOFIX ports, so let's test out the baby seats quickly before we jump in the third row. It's always a sweaty job putting baby seats in, but at least the Land Cruiser Prado is pretty simple to do it. You got top tether points for all 3 seats, ISOFIX for 2 outboard seats, and as you can see, the space is okay in the middle row between the 2 forward-facing and rear-facing seats, but it is tighter than you might have expected because the sides encroach a little bit onto me here in the middle. So the third row in the Prado certainly doesn't feel quite as well equipped for carrying 7 people all the time as something like a Hyundai Palisade, but it's still really decent and gives you that added practicality. Now I've got this second row slid all the way forwards, and you can see that behind my sort of fairly comfortable position there, I've actually got a little bit of legroom and a tiny bit of toe room as well, and my head is just nearly brushing the ceiling. So I could sit here actually pretty comfortably for a reasonable amount of time. You do have some extra nice little touches, like these seats fold up electrically, so you don't have to worry about putting your back out, pulling heavy seats up out of the floor, so that's really nice. And the actual mechanism is great, and you've got a lot of protection here, so your kids aren't going to get their fingers caught in there while that's going on. So I reckon that's pretty cool. I've also got electric backrest adjustment for me here, so I can go from sitting quite reclined to a little bit more upright and rather uncomfortable, but that means I can fit a couple of extra school bags behind me. The eagle-eyed Prado enthusiasts among you may have spotted that this particular car is fitted with the no-cost option flat tailgate package. That means you get this really nifty little piece of opening glass, which is great for chucking extra stuff in if your car is already loaded up and ready to go touring. So I reckon that's actually a very clever feature. You also obviously don't have the spare wheel on the back here. Instead, it's mounted underneath the car. That means you lose a little bit of fuel capacity. So this car's 85-litre tank is sort of a little more than half the size of the full-size tank you get on the Prado. But as another benefit for city users, you do get 140 millimeters less overall length than if you go for the Prado with the wheel on the back. So all interesting things there. Now we open this little boot, which is more of a door than a boot really, and it might not interface that well with your life. It might also mean that you have to go front into your parking spot, but you know, horses for courses. You got a couple of extra little storage pockets here, and inside there we can fit 52 of the Budget Direct soccer balls, which is a little bit shy of the Hyundai Palisade, which is so far the uncontested king of soccer ball storage, but 52 isn't too bad. And yeah, the boot floor is a little bit high, but that's kind of what you expect from a body-on-frame vehicle. I should also add that with the third row of seats folded down, the boot floor is totally flat in the Prado, and that means if you've got to store objects like soccer balls in, they're not going to roll out when you're parked on a piece of flat ground, which is always nice. The ADR combined consumption figure for the Toyota Prado is 7.9 litres per 100 Ks. Now in our testing, we saw that around 10.5 litres per 100 Ks in a mix of urban, suburban and highway driving. Servicing needs to be carried out every 6 months or 10,000 Ks, which is a little bit more regularly than a lot of its less serious rivals. However, it does match its bigger brother, the Toyota Land Cruiser 300 series, and also the Nissan Patrol. Now the warranty is 5 years or unlimited kilometres here in Australia, and over the last 12 months, the median Budget Direct customer paid $1,084 to comprehensively insure their new Toyota Prado. Now your premium will vary based on things that insurers take into account, such as your driving history, where you live, and whether you garage the car. So the Toyota Land Cruiser Prado, well, it's an interesting one. It's been around forever, and although it does look like an off-roader and has a lot of off-road capability, as I'll talk about in a minute, it's actually pretty well sorted out here on the tarmac. Like, it's not terrible, it's not totally hateful, and yeah, it's got a little bit of character to the way it drives. Now, this sort of centers around the 150 kilowatt, 500 Newton meter, 2.8 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine under the bonnet, which has been retuned a couple of years ago, and it is much better than it was before. There was a calibration retune as well, but it's still not the best in class. It doesn't have that muscularity of the Land Cruiser 300 series V6. It's adequate and the power outputs are pretty good, but sometimes the transmission still kind of hunts for gears a little bit. Even though it's only got 6 speeds to hunt through, it does hold the ratios further than where the power band drops, because it It tops out peak power at 3,400 RPM, but it seems to sort of rev almost to 4,500 if you put your foot flat. So yeah, a little bit annoying. You've also got these paddles here to control the gears if you want, but they're not true Tiptronic control. They just limit to how high the gear can go. So yeah, you know, not too bad. Again, that's not what the Prado is all about. It's all about just cruising along like this, at which point the suspension is pretty comfortable. It's quite agreeable for a large off-roader. It's not too jiggly, though that body on frame still does give you that some of that jitteriness that we're sort of used to from vehicles like this, but it's definitely come a long way in the 13 years that it's been on sale. Now, tip it into a corner, and again, the Prado, especially this KDSS equipped Kakadu model, none of the other models in the range get the KDSS system, which is essentially a sway bar disconnect system. It actually provides decent amount of confidence, and it feels quite secure coming through a corner, certainly more so than that Nissan Patrol. It feels a bit more planted, and you don't have to worry about managing the weight of this vehicle so much. It doesn't pick up the front end when you get back on the throttle. It just feels easy and simple to drive, and you can waft along without really worrying about anything. You do obviously get that really nice commanding driving position too. You're in a Land Cruiser. It doesn't feel like too much of a junior to the 300 series full-size cruiser. It still feels really nice and yeah, solid and yeah, commanding on the road. It's good. It's definitely a vibe. Of course, you can put 3.5 tons worth of caravan behind this thing, apparently, at least according to Toyota's rating. I don't know. We haven't tested it, so I can't really speak to whether it would struggle or not. But I'm sure it would do all right. And I think the brakes would be pretty good because we've got pretty decently sized 4-piston front brake calipers, which are bigger than anything you'd find on, say, a dual cab or a dual cab based large SUV, such as the Isuzu MU-X and also like a Ford Everest. So nice beefy braking system that I'm sure can be upgraded in the aftermarket, which is where owning a Toyota is going to win. Now, let's talk a little bit about safety, because over the years, Toyota has added to the safety equipment on this car. You've got 360-degree cameras, but it still retains its 5-star rating back from 2011, though it does have AEB and lane keep assist and also adaptive cruise control, but the suite just doesn't feel up to date. So it's fully technologically advanced, but you know, what do you get when you buy a car that's 13 years old? Kind of exactly that. So enough about the sort of boring on-road stuff. Let's have a little chat about how this thing performs off-road, where it really does excel. Now, I'm going to be frank, I didn't take the Land Cruiser Prado to its absolute limit. We sort of took it on a blue trail, but it did require a little bit of skill and to engage low range and also lock the rear diff, but I'll talk about that in just a second, because on the road the heavy and slow ratioed steering doesn't make a whole load of sense, though it does keep the car feeling pretty cruisy, but off-road it does allow you that extra little bit of precision and that calmness that you want, and you do feel a little bit back through the chassis and the steering wheel, and it allows you to judge your lines and judge grip a little bit better. And yeah, I mean, the Prado is just killer off-road for what it is. This car only has all-terrain tyres on it. They're not, you know, full-on mud terrains or anything like that. But yeah, it's super capable. And that, again, is a lot down to the smarts. Now, the Kakadu gets the multi-terrain select system. So you've got this little dial here that you can play around with and select from, you know, what have we got? Mud, sand, that sort of stuff. You've got to be in low range to do that, though. I didn't find that totally the most useful thing in the world, but what I did find great was having the low range, because that's always lovely to have, and it's absolutely what you expect from a Land Cruiser. Now, we did tackle a little rocky slope. I'll overlay some images of that right now. So initially we tried nice slow speed, went in with the open diffs, and it couldn't make it up. Locked the center diff, it was the same story. The outside rear wheel was stuck in a bog hole, and even the live axle rear suspension couldn't push it down quite far enough to get it over that. Locked the rear diffs though, and it's sweet. And it's kind of that capability that is why I think so many Australians love the Land Cruiser Prado, because it's not too huge, it's not too bad on fuel, and it's all right out here on the open road. And yet when you get yourself a little bit stuck, perhaps it's a muddy track that you went down one way when it was dry and now you've got to come back out, it's going to have your back to winch you out of those situations. And that's just a really nice, confidence inspiring thing to have. So does the Toyota Prado deserve to be Australia's best-selling large SUV? Well, in a lot of respects, at least on paper, it's a super easy vehicle to write off. It's been around for ages, and $87,807 does sound expensive until you drive this thing and realize that the driving dynamics are a lot better than some of its competitors, and it just works. It's rugged and it's dependable, and this range-topping Kakadu sprinkles a little bit of extra luxury on top, and I totally get why someone might want to go for this vehicle. That said, I wouldn't pick the Prado if most of my time is going to be spent in urban environments, because it does have that slightly jiggly low-speed ride. But when you get stuck off-road and you need that rear diff lock to come out and help you, it's there, it's going to look after you, and that's the reason I reckon so many people buy the Prado. But of course, let me know in the comments section down below why you bought a Prado, or perhaps why you didn't. While you're down there leaving your opinion, we'd also love it if you could hit subscribe down below if you haven't done so already, and as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.